She stood in the doorway, arms crossed, her expression cold and detached, like she was staring at a malfunctioning device she wished she'd never bought. "Do what I ask," she said, her voice measured, as though I might struggle to comprehend. "Then you get me." No anger, no emotion, just an empty gaze, like she was reciting instructions from a manual. It was 11:43 p.m., a detail I remember vividly because I was microwaving a leftover burrito while scrubbing grout in the kitchen tiles, a task listed under number 14 of her color-coded checklist stuck to the fridge. Her attention was the prize for completing all 21 tasks. I blinked at her, my voice barely audible. "I don't need a slot machine." She didn't react, no laugh, no frown. She simply turned and walked away, leaving me swallowed by silence. That silence stung more than any outburst could have. That moment happened 4 months ago, and it's been unraveling me ever since. Not because of something cruel she said, but because I realized I'd been quietly submitting to this system for years. A conditional affection meted out like rewards in a loyalty program. Clean the car, earn a smile. Cook dinner, get a peck on the cheek. Pay the bills, maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't roll over in bed and turn her back to me. The truth is, I was terrified. Terrified of saying no, terrified of being alone, terrified of confronting the reality I'd buried beneath layers of compliance. But after that night, something shifted. Small details began falling into place like scattered puzzle pieces finally aligning. The 3 locked folders on her laptop. Her weekly yoga nights, despite quitting the studio 6 months prior. Her sudden obsession with privacy. Her smile, which no longer reached her eyes. I wanted to believe I was imagining things. Then one Sunday, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while she was in the shower. A preview of a message lit up the screen. "Still on for Friday? Can't wait to see you again." My chest tightened. I did nothing. Instead, I sat on the couch, opened my laptop, and ordered air fresheners I didn't need, unsure what else to do with my trembling hands. Internally, I was unraveling, but not silently anymore. Because Friday arrived with a heaviness that made my stomach churn, even though nothing had technically happened yet. I couldn't eat, I couldn't focus on work. I kept refreshing my email, hoping for some miraculous sign that I was wrong. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. Mallory was different that day. She hummed in the kitchen, sipping her oat milk latte, dressed far too elegantly for what she claimed was a quick trip to Target. Burgundy lipstick, perfume reserved for special occasions, and those heeled boots I hadn't seen in years. Softly, I asked, "Target?" She smiled at me like I was a naive child and replied, "Yeah, I might stop by that plant shop too. You know, the one by 5th. Then she kissed the top of my head, a gesture so casual it felt rehearsed, and left. At 6:07 p.m., the sound of the front door clicking shut echoed through the hallway. I stood frozen, staring at the closed door, my heart pounding in my chest. Every instinct screamed at me to chase after her, to confront the betrayal that had been quietly unfolding for months. But instead, I stayed rooted to the spot, paralyzed by indecision. My body felt heavy, and my mind raced with questions I didn't want to answer. I wandered into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, then switched it off almost immediately. My hands trembled as I gripped the counter. Pretending everything was normal had become impossible. And then it hit me, the text, "Still on for Friday." Those 4 words looped endlessly in my head. Without thinking, I reached for her laptop, only to find she'd changed the password. Of course she had. The realization struck me like a punch to the gut, not because I couldn't access it, but because it confirmed what I'd suspected all along. She had something to hide, something deliberate and recent. I sank onto the couch, my heart thudding painfully against my ribs. For the first time in years, I picked up the phone and dialed my brother. Wendell answered on the first ring. His voice was sharp, cutting straight to the point. "You sound like you've seen a ghost," he said before I even spoke. And so I told him everything. The checklist marriage, the cryptic comments about our relationship being transactional, the suspicious texts, the locked laptop. I expected him to laugh, to tell me I was overreacting. Instead, his response was blunt and unyielding. "You need to stop playing house with someone who's already checked out emotionally." Before I could process his words, he asked a question that stopped me cold. "Do you want the truth or your dignity first?" Before I could reply, my phone buzzed. A photo from an unknown number flashed across the screen. It was her, Mallory, laughing, holding hands with a man I didn't recognize. They were at a bar, his smug grin practically radiating arrogance. The caption mocked me, "Still on for Friday." My chest tightened, but strangely, the world didn't collapse around me. Instead, there was silence, a deafening void where anger or grief should have been. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared at the image, feeling completely disconnected from the life I thought I knew. I wasn't the protagonist anymore. I was an extra in my own story. For the first time, I let myself see the truth. I looked around the house, the one I'd paid for, the one she'd decorated to perfection while making me feel like an unwelcome guest. Then I opened the hall closet and pulled out a small cardboard box labeled Wendell's stuff. Inside were fragments of my past, my birth certificate, a savings bond from Grandma, and a leather notebook I hadn't touched since the early days of our marriage. I grabbed a pen and wrote one sentence. "Tonight I'm done pretending." Something shifted inside me. The weight I'd carried for so long lifted slightly, replaced by clarity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone in the dim light, staring at the photo. Her smile, it wasn't forced or fake. It was real, vibrant, alive. The kind of smile she hadn't shown me in years. And the man beside her? Mid-30s, tight shirt, sleeve tattoo, exuding confidence like he owned the room. He looked like he knew she was taken and didn't care. Maybe that was part of the thrill for them both. Was I really that easy to replace? Or had I already been replaced long before this moment? The next morning, she walked in like nothing had happened. Her hair was messy in a way she never allowed me to see, and she wore a sweatshirt that wasn't hers. In her hand was a coffee cup from a place across town, a place I knew she hated. She moved through the house casually, humming under her breath, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. Watching her, I felt detached, like I was observing someone else's life. This wasn't my home anymore. It was just a stage set for a performance I no longer wanted to be part of. She seemed startled to find me at the dining table. I remained silent, just watching her. She glanced at me briefly, uninterested, muttered an excuse about traffic, and headed upstairs. That was all. No explanation, no lie, just cold indifference. I wasn't sure what I had hoped for. A confession? An apology? Some convoluted story about how we drifted apart? No, she didn't owe me anything, because in her mind, I had already been reduced to white noise. And the worst part? I had let it happen. But later that same afternoon, another message arrived from the unknown number. This time, it was a video. I knew I shouldn't open it. I should have deleted it immediately, but I didn't. I tapped play, and as soon as the footage started, something inside me twisted so tightly I could barely breathe. There she was, perched on some man's lap in a dimly lit booth, laughing, sipping wine. His hand rested on her thigh beneath the table. She leaned in close, whispering something into his ear. He nodded, smirking. "He'll do whatever I say. I don't even have to lie. I just dangle myself like a prize. He never questions it." I paused the video. I couldn't bear to watch more. My stomach churned. Anger hadn't set in yet. What consumed me was humiliation. Humiliated by the woman who once vowed to love me, who promised we'd grow together. Now she was out there boasting about how easy I was to manipulate, treating me like a dog eager for scraps. That night, I didn't confront her. Instead, I began digging. Not for revenge, not for evidence, but for truth. I needed to understand the depth of her betrayal. I started with our shared bank account, untouched by me for weeks. What I found made my blood run cold. Over $4,000 had vanished in the last month alone. Lavish dinners, rideshare charges, weekend getaways booked under her maiden name. I sat there, heart pounding, scrolling through transactions she never mentioned, not once. She hadn't even tried to hide it. That's how little she thought of me. That's how insignificant I had become in her eyes. And then, as if things couldn't worsen, I stumbled upon an email. It was a confirmation from a moving company. Final pickup scheduled for next Tuesday. A storage unit address. A new zip code. She was leaving, but not to start over alone. The lease agreement bore a name I didn't recognize, Jordan Lane. According to the paperwork, Mallory was moving in with him in less than 5 days. The same Mallory who kissed me goodbye each morning before work. The same Mallory who told my mother she'd been feeling tired lately. She had already begun a new life while I was still trying to piece together the fragments of ours. I stared at the document for what felt like hours, frozen, unable to process how silently and completely she had erased me. The deepest betrayals aren't loud. They don't come with shouting or shattered dishes. They creep in quietly, slipping through the cracks you've ignored for too long. That's how it felt when I saw his name on the lease agreement, a stranger whose existence she never hinted at. Yet here he was, waiting to take my place. The note at the bottom was typed as though it were nothing. Utilities to be transferred before Monday. As if ending a marriage was just another item on a weekend to-do list. Something to casually fit between errands and leisure. I wondered if she'd already started packing. If the red suitcase hidden behind the closet door was already filled with clothes meant for someone else. Was she planning to disappear from my life while still living under my roof? I couldn't breathe. I stepped outside and sat on the front steps. A neighbor passed by and waved. I waved back, pretending everything was fine. In that moment, it struck me how invisible heartbreak is. No one sees it. No one asks. They assume your life is moving forward smoothly, not crumbling beneath the surface. That night, I couldn't look at her without feeling sick. She was lounging in her robe, texting someone with a smirk on her face. Probably him, Jordan. I wanted to ask, why? Why him? Why now? What had I done to deserve this? But I didn't. I knew she'd twist my questions into excuses to justify her actions, so instead I watched. I listened, observed every detail like a man documenting a crime scene. The next day she left again, claiming she was meeting friends. No specifics, no names, no time, just a vague excuse. I waited 20 minutes, then opened the drawer on her side of the bed. There it was, her spare phone, the one she thought I didn't know about. I unlocked it using her old birthday. She'd never changed the code. And there it all was. Messages to Jordan that made my skin crawl. Photos, voicemails, plans. She wasn't hesitating. She was all in. She'd been telling him how boring I was, how she felt like she was mothering a man-child. She even joked about how easy it was to manipulate me. He still thinks we're going through a rough patch, she wrote in one thread. Poor Wendell, he's trying so hard, I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. It was either that or scream. But then one message stopped me cold. It was from Jordan. Does he know we met before the separation? Her reply, "No, he still thinks I met you this year. Let's keep it that way." I read it twice. My jaw tightened. I hadn't just been lied to. I'd been set up. The marriage hadn't fallen apart naturally. It had been replaced before it even began to crumble. And in that moment, I realized she hadn't just decided to leave me. She'd been gone for a long time. Mallory's birthday was approaching, October 3rd. She always claimed to hate birthdays. "It's just a number," she'd say dismissively. But this year, she was suddenly excited. She booked a facial, got her nails done, and bought a sleek navy blue dress, the kind she only wore when she wanted attention. When I asked if she wanted to go out for dinner, she brushed me off, saying she already had plans. "Just the girls," she said, tossing her hair over her shoulder like a teenager. I nodded and told her to have fun, but inside I was breaking because I knew exactly where she was going, and it wasn't with the girls. On the morning of her birthday, she left early, her heels clicking against the floor as she walked out the door. The hour was too early for dinner. She stepped out wearing heels, her lips painted a familiar shade of red, and around her neck hung a gold chain I'd gifted her years ago, back when everything between us still felt genuine. I watched as she left without even glancing back, no parting words or acknowledgement. Alone on the couch, I sat motionless. No tears came, no urge to drink either. Time seemed suspended until 6:43 p.m. when my phone vibrated with another message from the same unknown number. "Thought you might want to see who she's really with tonight." Below the text was an image. Mallory laughing alongside Jordan at a rooftop bar, their glasses raised in celebration. They toasted to something, perhaps her freedom, perhaps my obliviousness. But whatever it was, clarity hit me like a freight train. It wasn't just the photo that struck me cold, it was the line beneath it. "Ask her about the trip she took to Atlanta last spring." The word Atlanta sent a chill down my spine. She'd claimed it was a work retreat, an all-women event where phones were off limits for 3 days. When she returned, she seemed distant, irritated by my questions. "You're too clingy," she'd snapped before brushing it off. Back then, I let it slide, as I always did. But not this time. I retrieved the spare phone and began scrolling through old messages, wondering why I hadn't done so sooner. There it was, a thread dated March 12th. "Jordan, can't wait to see you tonight. Room 317, same hotel as last time. Mallory, don't forget the rose, and I'll wear the red thing." My chest tightened as if something inside me had hollowed out. That Atlanta trip wasn't the start. It was merely a continuation of something they'd been carrying on long before I suspected anything. All those nights she slept beside me, laughed at my jokes, kissed me goodnight. She'd been living 2 lives. I moved to the bedroom and perched on the edge of the bed, staring into her half-empty closet. Some shoes were missing, along with her favorite hoodie and a few pieces of jewelry. Piece by piece, she was preparing to leave, ensuring I wouldn't notice until it was too late. But now I saw every move she'd made, every calculated step toward abandoning me quietly. If she wanted a grand exit, then fine, I'd give her one. Her birthday would serve as the perfect stage. Reaching for my notebook, not the one filled with sorrowful musings, but the other, reserved for lists and plans, I opened to a blank page. At the top, I wrote 3 words, "Make her speak." The night stretched endlessly before her return. I didn't pace or cry. Instead, I planned. Something within me had shifted. Enough of being the quiet pushover who swallowed pain to keep peace. Mallory had taken too much for far too long. My trust, my dignity, my voice. And now I intended to reclaim something vital, truth. Not revenge, not anger, just unfiltered honesty delivered in a way she couldn't dismiss or distort. When she finally walked through the door, the house was cloaked in darkness, except for one light, the flickering hallway bulb near the stairs. Its glow cast elongated shadows across the entryway, shifting eerily with each faint buzz of the filament. The sound of heels echoed through the room as she entered, each step sharp against the hardwood floor. She wore a navy blue dress, carrying a gift bag that swung lightly at her side. I wondered if it was from him. Perfume, lingerie, something else? It didn't matter. "Why is it so dark?" she called out, dropping her keys into the bowl by the door. Her voice was calm, almost bored. She had no idea what awaited her. I stayed silent on the couch, watching as she moved toward the living room. Then she froze, her eyes landing on the coffee table. Photos were laid out in neat rows. Her with Jordan at the rooftop bar, their hands intertwined at the park. Her standing outside an Atlanta hotel. Each image time-stamped, undeniable proof staring back at her. Her lips parted, but no words came. "I know everything," I said, my tone steady and cold. "Not just about him, about Atlanta, the moving truck, how long this has been going on." Mallory blinked, then did what she always did when cornered. She tried to pivot. "I can explain," she began. "No," I cut her off. "You already did, in texts, in photos, in lies." She took a step forward, attempting to regain control. "Wendell, you're blowing this out of proportion. You've been distant for months. We're not happy. This wasn't planned." I let out a humorous chuckle. "Not planned? You booked movers, opened a joint account, changed your mailing address? Did you think I wouldn't notice until after you were gone? And yet, there you were, rubbing my feet the night you got back from Atlanta, looking me in the eye while calling me sweet, all while texting him under the table." For a moment she was silent. Then, like flipping a switch, she turned icy, shoulders squared, eyes narrowed. "So what now? You want to punish me? Ruin my life because I moved on?" I met her gaze without flinching. "No. What I want is much simpler, the truth, out loud, for everyone to hear." That's when she noticed the blinking red light tucked behind a plant on the bookshelf, a tiny GoPro recording every word. She lunged for it, but I was faster. "It doesn't matter," I said. "I already have a backup. This isn't about posting or shaming you. It's about having a version of this story that you don't get to edit." Her face flushed, not with shame, but with panic. Control was slipping through her fingers, and she knew it. "I'll tell everyone you're unhinged," she spat. "Go ahead," I replied, "but make sure you explain the photos, the texts, why you never told me you were leaving until I found out myself." She didn't respond, just stood there, makeup slightly smeared under one eye, the gift bag still dangling from her wrist. She looked less like the woman I married and more like someone caught stealing a life they hadn't earned. In that heavy silence, something even clearer dawned on me. She wasn't sorry, not for what she'd done, only for getting caught. Slowly, Mallory sank onto the chair opposite me, the air seeming to leave the room along with any remnants of defiance. But her expression remained unchanged. No remorse, no regret, just emptiness. It was calculated. She scanned the room, trying to assess the damage. I didn't move, I didn't shout, I just observed her unravel. "You blindsided me," she whispered finally. "That's low, Wendell." I almost laughed at the absurdity. Blindsided. I had been in a relationship where I was the only one playing by the rules, yet she had the audacity to act like the victim. My hands tightened into fists, but I refused to fall into another of her guilt-laden traps. "I didn't record you to hurt you," I said calmly. "I did it to protect myself. So when you twist the truth later, I have proof that I wasn't imagining things." She looked at me with that familiar expression she wore when waiters got her order wrong. Disdain masked as indifference. "So what do you want, Wendell? You want me to beg, cry, admit I made a mistake?" I shook my head. No, I just want honesty, for once. That's all. No lies, no excuses, just the truth. Mallory rolled her eyes and leaned back. Fine, you want it? Here it is. Yes, I started talking to Jordan before Atlanta. Yes, I slept with him that weekend. And yes, I've been planning to leave you for months, but I didn't tell you because I knew you'd fall apart.
You're too fragile, and I couldn't handle the drama. I don't know what I expected, but her honesty struck harder than any lie ever could. It felt like being doused in cold water after drowning in warm denial. I stayed silent, letting her continue. I outgrew you, she said softly, attempting to sound poetic. You stopped challenging me. You became comfortable, predictable. I didn't want to be a caretaker for a man who never figured out what he wanted. I stood up then, my heart pounding but steady. And yet you stayed. Took the house, the joint account, my time, my trust. You could have left. Mallory shrugged. It was easier this way. That single word, easier, shattered whatever remnants of us I still clung to. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was humiliated.
But beneath that humiliation, something stronger began to emerge: clarity. I nodded slowly and handed her an envelope. Inside was a letter I'd written earlier that week, not just a goodbye, but a notice. I was moving out. The lease on a small apartment across town was already signed. The utilities were in my name. My essentials were packed in the trunk of my car. While she had been plotting her escape, I had quietly planned mine. Her face fell. Wait, you're leaving? Yeah, I replied. You made it clear you've already checked out. I'm just making it official. For the first time that night, she looked stunned, not because she lost me, but because she hadn't gotten to walk away first. Mallory never imagined I would leave. She planned to replace me quietly, neatly, without resistance. But I was done being the easy one. Mallory didn't speak for a long time after I told her I was leaving. She simply stared at the envelope as if it had insulted her. Maybe it had. Perhaps it upset her that I wasn't falling apart, pleading for her to stay, or chasing the shadow of the person she once was. The silence between us no longer felt heavy. It was hollow, like two strangers waiting for an elevator on separate floors of life. Finally, she asked, "So you're just done?" I replied, "No, I've been done for a long time. I just didn't realize it until now." That night, I didn't sleep in the guest room. I slept in my car. Everything I needed was already packed. 3 duffel bags, a notebook, and a laptop, still holding bookmarks to articles I never finished reading. At 2:17 a.m., I drove to my new place. No music played, just the hum of a man who had finally stopped lying to himself. The apartment was modest, 2 rooms, carpet that desperately needed replacing. But it felt like freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't tiptoeing around anyone's expectations. I was living on my own terms. Standing in the middle of that quiet space, I dropped my bags and laughed, not out of joy, but because I remembered what it felt like to breathe again. In the days that followed, I began writing again. Not just rants or regrets, but real, honest thoughts. I spent more time with my brother and told my mom the truth about everything. I unfollowed Mallory everywhere and deleted the photos we'd taken together. It wasn't about erasing the past. It was about letting go of a version of love that never truly loved me back. As for Mallory, she moved in with Jordan as planned. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard things gotten messy quickly. Money disputes, trust issues, secrets unraveling. Maybe she realized that love isn't a performance review. Or maybe she didn't. Either way, it's no longer my concern. I still flinch at small things and find myself scanning for signs of trouble. But I've also started sleeping through the night, a feat that feels nothing short of miraculous. This isn't a story of revenge or winning. There's no dramatic arc here. just a quiet man who learned how to choose himself after spending years playing a supporting role in his own life. This is my story, not for pity, not for applause, but perhaps to remind someone else that silence isn't strength when it shields someone else's lies.
Have you ever walked away from someone who thought they'd already replaced you? What moment made you decide enough was enough? If this resonates with you, share your thoughts. And if you found meaning in this story, pass it along. Sometimes the most powerful endings are the ones where you quietly step out and never look back.